When I used to live in Australia, I lived in Sydney for a little bit. People in Sydney would talk about their brethren up in Queensland. And they talk about the people who live up in Queensland, and people who lived in Sydney lived in New South Wales. And they talk about the people who lived in Queensland as banana benders. That is, banana benders. They did not look too highly on the people who lived in Queensland because they were maybe a little bit more relaxed, maybe a little easygoing, and so they described them as people who, what they did for a living was they bent bananas, meaning they did not really add any value to the Australian economy. Well, I thought this was kind of funny. First of all, because hearing an Australian say banana bender seems kind of funny. But then I thought also, like, well, who else is doing things that don't need to be done, right? I mean, who are we hiring in our lives, right? Who are we bringing to our lives because we believe we need them? And we believe we need them because we're kind of maybe part of I don't want to say a conspiracy, but we believe in certain things that just might not be true. Now, Bush, too, talked about this being trutheisms. And there's this one big trutheism or religious belief or religious financial belief in the financial markets that really hits the level or the fanaticism of someone who is like a religious zealot. And it crosses over, or there's the second layer where, and then what they're doing isn't really anything. In fact, they're probably hurting people's portfolios. And so with today's podcast, I think it's episode 342, I want to talk about how there's probably hundreds of millions of people. I shouldn't even say probably. There are hundreds of millions of people who have basically hired a financial banana bender to do something for them that just doesn't need to be done. And they don't even realize they're doing this because they have this belief at kind of a financial, religious level type belief, so they don't even see it as a belief, they just see it as this is actually the way to do it. Hey everybody, this is R.C. Peck, and this is my weekend podcast, and the theme, maybe it's not as clear as I want it to be, but the theme for this podcast is a combination of two things. One, banana benders. All right, people doing things that just don't need to be done. And two, having people really look at their financial religion. And one of the biggest financial religions I know about is this religion called stock diversification or diversification. Right? You need to have 50 different ticker symbols or 20 different mutual funds, and then rebalance those funds that are spread across 12 different asset classes, rebalance them once a year. And oh, by the way, we have pretty amazing algorithms that can do that for you. But to me, that's a combination of a banana bender and a financial religion. So what I want to do is look at one of the biggest religions out there in the financial world and really just take it apart with two price charts. So here's the first one. Now, what you're looking at here, this is a price chart comparing international markets and the U.S. market. So literally there's an index that tracks all the markets on the planet minus the U.S. markets. And you can see from 2000, at the very end of 2001 to the end of 2008, that blue line, you can see here, this blue line here. Actually, it's not the gray line with the blue arrow. That is going higher. Now, when this price chart goes higher, that means international stocks are growing and protecting people's money better than U.S. stocks. Now, if you were to look at a price chart that goes back 20 or 30 years, you would notice immediately that it's kind of a cosine wave, where there's these 6 to 8 year periods of time where international does better, and then it's followed by the 6 to 8 year periods of time where the S&P 500 or U.S. stocks do better than all the international stocks. And it goes through this cycle. One cycle is B in international stocks, followed by B in U.S. stocks. And as you can see with the red arrow falling from the beginning of 2008 until today, U.S. stocks have outperformed international stocks. But there are religious financial zealots out there that are telling you today that you should be diversified in international markets because it's safer. It is actually safer because you need to diversify in international markets in case, they go up or something happens to U.S. markets, so you want to have some money in international markets because it's the safer thing, right? Because you're diversified across different asset classes. And so the human brain goes, that makes sense. I get it. But what the human brain does not do is challenge that person and go, well, show me the evidence. Why don't you just show me the evidence that it's actually better to be diversified? Can you show it to me? No, they can't. Because they actually don't have the evidence. Because this religion, their job is to create believers. And whatever the religion, I'm talking real religions now, whether it's the Latter-day Saints or the Catholics or the Presbyterians or Muslims, it actually doesn't matter. But if you notice, most of them don't actually use evidence to prove their point. Most of them say, hey, it's on faith. Now, this is not a podcast to rip on religions. This is simply pointing out that evidence, black and white evidence, is not a big part of religions. It's more about, supposedly, it's about principles and being good, though that seems to have been lost, I think, for a while. But what you have here is a financial religion that says you've got to be diversified. And so what's happening is people are getting hurt with their portfolios are getting hurt, their futures are getting hurt, their finances are getting hurt because of this financial religion called diversification. And again, this is a price chart comparing international markets to the S&P 500. And as you can see, there's long periods of time where one does better than the other. Now, I want to zoom into kind of 2016, and I have one more price chart I want to show you. So this price chart is showing you what the other one was. I've just zoomed into the last 18 months of it. The previous price chart went back to 2001. So it was about 15 or 16 years in length. This one's only about 18 months in length. And the thick blue line is a 70-day exponential moving average. And so you can just see that it's still falling. And then you have this dotted line here. And you can kind of see here that international versus S&P is in a sideways market right now, meaning one's not necessarily doing better than the other. Yes, when this line goes up, maybe, the S&P is doing a little bit better, and when the line goes down, international's doing a little bit better. But generally speaking, when you look at this, going back to about December 2015, it's been in a sideways channel. Now, going into this channel, it was 8 years of U.S. stocks, the S&P 500, beating international stocks. So, when this line breaks to the upside, that means international stocks will be holding the baton. They'll be holding that, they'll be saying, yes, now's the time to have exposure to the international market. And it does not matter where you live. You can be living in Europe, you can be living in Asia or Australia, South America. I'm just simply pointing out two kind of stock classes. One, based on location is the U.S., and the other one based on location is everything else in the world that's not the U.S. There will be a point where you will not want to be in U.S. stocks. And everyone in the U.S. is going to feel a little uncomfortable not having that exposure. But based on evidence, there are long periods of time, 6 to 8 years, are these cycles where the international market's going to outrun. When this line breaks out decisively, I'm doing air quotes around the word decisively, then there'll be time to put money into the international market. But this is not what the financial religion called diversification says. I simply wanted to point out to you, based on hard evidence, that there are cycles between being exposed internationally and being exposed to U.S. stocks. Now, what is the takeaway if it's not obvious? Diversification is a tax. Diversification is a religion. It's a religion that people do not believe they're in. So anyone who's getting annoyed or put off by a KRC, you got an issue with religion? I do have an issue with a religion that people do not believe they're even part of. If you know you're part of the Mormons or the Catholics or you're Muslim or you're Jewish and you know it and you're behaving a certain way, yeah, it's totally fine. But it's when you don't know you're part of a group and you're acting some way just out of blind faith, I think that is dangerous. it is a tax on your money, right? It is. Being exposed internationally the past 8 years has been a tax on your money. It's been a tax on your future, and it's been a tax on your choices, because when you have less money in your portfolio, you have fewer choices. And that's why when I talked about in the email that I sent you that you read, my experience is most people are driving around this country with a foot on their brake, saying, well, I got some money, whether it's in bonds. Should you be in bonds? I don't know. I'm supposed to. Are you internationally exposed? Well, yeah. Why? Well, because you're supposed to. Well, that's kind of like a foot on the brake. And if you're driving from New York to San Francisco, about a 3,100-mile drive, most of it will be on the Highway 80. Imagine driving that whole thing with one of your feet tapping the brake the whole time. And this is, in fact, what diversification is doing to people's portfolios. It is giving them fewer choices. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for being in my world. This is just another step in helping you protect your portfolio and your future, and getting back control over your portfolio and future again. Until next time, this is RC Peck. Hey guys, look, would you like me to implement my strategies for you? I know there are people who like the strategies that I use. Some people don't even know the names of them. Some people might just love the podcast, but yet, you know what? There is a better way to invest. And if you're not doing it, that is fine. Have someone do it the right way. And that is one of the things that clients come to me for, and other listeners of my podcast saying, look, I get that I'm not doing it. Could you just do it for me? Or at least let's talk about that. And if that is you and you're noticing, you know what, maybe that is me, the next step is straightforward. And the next step is to reach out to Patty. You can either email her at Patty, Patty, at fearlesswealth.com, or you can just give her a call at 650-257-0207. Thank you guys for being in my world, and I look forward to speaking with you next week. All right, take care.